Dustyne Bryant, how you doing today?
I am doing is what I like to say. I am doing. I don't know what that always means, but I'm doing.
Well, it's best not to clarify anything. I mean, why just keep it open for interpretation and people can always be guessing. So I like that strategy. Dustin, before we really go into anything too serious, I want to know this first. Is there a job that you think should exist that doesn't, or maybe you just don't know that exists, but you really would like to create more awareness for the job that you think should exist?
Within the industry, I assume you're talking about.
I'm not putting any classification on it, so you can take it any which direction you want.
Oh wow, a job that I think should exist that maybe doesn't exist or maybe. I really feel like and maybe this is just the space that I'm in right now. I really feel like there should be either a dedicated role or maybe more awareness around the importance of mentorship and sponsorship for people within their career path, no matter what it is. Like if you've chosen to go into real estate or insurance or restaurantism, whatever it is, that there's somebody dedicated within that organization for pairing you up with a mentor. And it's even okay to say, maybe this mentor isn't my person. Is there another mentor? Or maybe you have like a rotation of mentors that you put that one person to until that natural attraction just kind of happens and magic happens in essence, not even success, but just the magic, because we all know that sometimes mentorships just happen by accident and you end up thriving and finding new parts about your discovery of that industry or where you are in that space when you find the right mentor. So I think maybe just more emphasis or a dedicated position for mentorships and sponsorships.
That's a very insightful and actually well thought out answer, Dustin. Mine's way less serious. I would go with a line scientist. I feel like there needs to be more people studying the way people behave in lines and react, and the employees. Like, I don't know. I think I was getting a soft pretzel in a mall, maybe, which is a weird statement in of itself to be doing. And
I
at
feel
this
like
time,
Disney has that job role down, like a Q scientist. When you say line, at first when you said line, I was thinking like a line with a mane. Like we need
oh no,
somebody. Oh yeah,
no.
no, I feel like Disney for sure, or Universal Studios for sure has the science down on behavior within cues.
I think you're probably right. I guess that's. I would like to see it brought into like even like lower level like companies that aren't really focusing. Anytime like people could gather in a way that might be unplanned, I feel like you should have a plan for it. So I don't know. That's just maybe my particular thing. But
Yeah, for sure. Well, I guess that's a different perspective, gathering in an unplanned way, because for sure people gather in a quite meticulously planned way. You decide which line you want to get into.
yeah, and so moving that over to the world of insurance, and you kind of maybe hit on it a little bit, but I did want to sort of talk about your viewpoint of the industry and sort of the people coming in and out of it, and sort of what you see and what you think is maybe most important. Some of the areas that we maybe underlook in terms of value within the industry, like what sort of excites you as the people that really make it go.
I think my answer a couple of years ago versus my answer now probably would have been completely different. And I think a lot of that has to do with what's happened over the course of the last 2 years, socially to the entire world, right? And how we've had more time as, a shift towards work from home has kind of taken predominance. It gives you more time to kind of reflect introspectively on what really matters to you. And for me personally, this is kind of, I kind of got lost in the world of working from home and just killing it that way. And just in the last couple of months, I've kind of seen this shift in myself that moves from, I'll start, let me take it back just a step to kind of help answer this question and like stop me if I get off the point of the question and reiterate the question, because I might jump down a rabbit hole and totally forget what the question was. So like I was licensed in life for the very first, life and health for the first time in 2007. That's when my career journey basically started. And I didn't realize it was a career journey. So that's why the sponsorship mentorship thing is kind of there, in my purview. So first licensed in life and health in 2007, became licensed in PNC in 2008. In 2007, my perspective of insurance was setting up 125 cafeteria plans, that it was paperwork. It was going in and establishing a checklist that you had to get through. That's not insurance. It took me a while to establish that insurance is a relationship business, and relationships are tricky and awkward and hard. And that's where the mentorship kind of really was needed for me, because I am more of an introverted extrovert. So I needed somebody to help me figure out the relationship piece of it, because I was really good and still am at the checklist part of it, right? So then in 2008, when I transferred to PNC, got into an agency rather than kind of doing an independent contractor thing, which is not my jam at all. I'm not the outside producer type, because again, the relationship piece was the hard piece for me, right? So transferred into the agency and got more into the checklisty stuff, the account manager, CSR checklisty type stuff. And that's kind of where I found that I had an interest in insurance. It was the education piece for me. It was the knowledge base information for me. So I found insurance in 2007. And then I found my purpose in insurance in 2014, because that agency wasn't the right place for me. There was not mentorship. There was not sponsorship. There was not a way for me to find a path other than focusing on the education piece for me, which I found through the National Alliance. I'm not, promoting who my employer is at this point, but that's where I found it. Those faculty members, there's one particular faculty member, Dr. Bratton, is here local to Arkansas. Well, he's not in Arkansas anymore, but he was at the time professor at UCA. And I saw, like, whether he knew it or not, like, I want to be him. So I kind of attached myself to him as my passive mentor. He's got no idea who I am even. So I attached myself to that and was like, I want to work my way through the CIC. And Dr. Bratton was the education consultant my entire way through my CIC. So I was just like, oh, it's Dr. Bratton again. Oh, it's Dr. Bratton again, and just kept learning from him along the way. So he was my mentor in an essence, until I discovered that this agency wasn't my place. There was no mentorship or sponsorship there for me. And I'm discovering that I need to find a different way. So I found another agency, and through that, that magic happened. It was an accident kind of thing. I found a mentor there. He happened to be my leadership that was there, but there was no discussion of, I'm going to be your mentor, I'm going to help you find your way kind of thing. It just naturally happened. So I found my purpose for insurance there. I found insurance. Next, I found my purpose in insurance. And that was about 2014. So about 7 years after I was first licensed, found my purpose. And it wasn't until I came here to the National Alliance, as like a total leap of faith, that I've discovered a passion. So yes, I was passionate about my work and finding my purpose, but now in the industry, I'm truly figuring out my passion and my place, and where that goes. So again, I've already forgotten what your question was, and I hope that answered your question. So if you want to restate it, go ahead, or if you have a follow-up, let's go.
There's no judgment here, and I think that was perfect. And the question that comes up next for me, and like you said, finding the purpose and then the passion, how much do you think agencies are even aware of those two things? And because I don't think
They're
I guess
not.
when an agency brings in somebody, they're not looking to do that for their employees. And I'm assuming
Right.
you've seen
And
it across the board here. How do we maybe get that on the radar to help introduce that to their people?
so you asked if agencies are really aware of that. No, they're not. If they are, kudos, because then they've done a lot of homework to get there. Oh, and I think this kind of led into my answer 2 years ago, and my answer now would be two totally different things, because agencies aren't aware of that. And there's been this shift over the course of the last 2 years where people are really introspectively looking as to, what does my career mean to me? Once I've found my purpose or my passion, there's been this shift in me from work-life balance, like this backslash thing. There's work, there's life, there's work, there's personal stuff. That's not there for me anymore. There is no work-life balance. There is life balance, because I've recently discovered that I've found my passion within insurance. So to me, this isn't work anymore. This is everything for me. My whole entire life. Not that work is my whole entire life, but how all of it works within my life is now a passion, right? So there's no work-life balance. And a lot of people, and maybe agencies, will focus on that work-life balance. We give you work life balance because you can work 2 days from home and 3 days in the office, or vice versa, whatever that split is. Or we've given you flex time. That's how you can figure out your work life balance. So there's no focus on just the balance. We want you to find your passion either within the industry or here within our agency. No, they're just worried on whether or not you're spending enough time with your kids versus at home or at work or whatever, right? So they're no, they don't know that that's there. And I really don't even think, and I would love for somebody to like comment on your podcast and be like, we've established, purpose
Yeah.
and passion.
Well, it's an interesting thing. The things that you mentioned, the things that are obviously commonly referenced, are more transactional, tangible things that can be sort of seen and felt versus kind of more what you're talking about. If there's more of an emotional side of things where it's like the mental state of sort of your constant in the day to day, right? And
Right.
again, there's probably not a good answer for this. I don't know if there's a question in here, but how much of it would the industry be served if that got on the radar? Because like you said, we don't, we're just starting to talk about the balance of where and how we're working, let alone
Yeah.
sort of what we're thinking about while we're doing the work. Is this something that maybe feels like we're a little early on this, or is this something that we should at least be contemplating now?
Oh, Lord, no, we're not early on it at all. If anything, we're way behind. If anything, if you look at the medical field, they quickly find a passion. They check, they do the checklists as they go in with their nursing or their doctors. They've got to hit certain points to make sure they're evaluating that whole client, or that whole patient. But they quickly and often sometimes even enter the medical field with their passion. And that's grueling work in terms of everything that happened over the last few years within the medical industry. The people that stuck are truly the people that had the passion for doing that. And I think the industry is behind, the insurance industry is behind on that, because there's a lot of focus really early on in terms of new entrants into our industry, growing your book to X number of dollars. This is the marker that shows you're successful. This is the number you need to hit. Marketing reps come in and they set your sales goals. Like, you have to do this in order to maintain this level of contract. Or they might even have various levels of contract in order for you to get VIP concierge service with our carrier or with this carrier for your agency, for you to be able to not stay on the phone for an hour. You can have this special number if you hit this special number, right? And I've experienced that. And it was great to be a part of an agency where it was like we had a dedicated line to an underwriter that would answer our questions within 5 minutes versus another smaller agency that might have to stay on the line for 45 minutes waiting for that underwriter or claims rep or whatever. Because we were part of a bigger organization, that's a huge barrier to small agencies, right? But those new people, in terms of new entrants that come in, they see the numbers because that's all they're being told is this is what it takes to make you successful. And when they don't hit that numbers, they're not finding their place in the industry. They think they don't fit in, which means they can't move from finding a place or a purpose onto a passion. So no, I don't think we're ahead of the time in talking about this today. I think we're way far behind. And what that means for the industry, if it could shift, if people could focus in any industry, honestly, between the checklists of, I went from CSR to a CSR number 1, number 2, account manager, those title levels, or producer to executive producer to partner or owner or agency principal, whatever your next step in terms of title is, or even in compensation, you're not finding your purpose. You're not finding your passion. You're checking the list. And that is not what's going to keep you within an industry, any industry, not just the insurance industry. That's just going to keep you going, what's next? And I think that's been a huge shift for me, is that I've always been of the goal setting mindset. What's next? Like, what's the next step in the checklist of things? How do I know I'm being successful? Well, it's because my retention numbers have gone up, or it's because I went from CSR to account manager, from account manager to account executive, from this to a department leader, to personalized department leader. That's how I measured my success. And it was only within I think I've only discovered it honestly within the last couple of months, that I've gone beyond finding my purpose in the industry, which was, climbing whatever ladder you want to look at, to finding my passion. And that's a different shift in mindset that I wasn't ready for, but started figuring it out. And once you find that passion, I feel like anybody, in terms of where it would take the industry, it would take us so far, not only for the talent pool, which is a huge conversation. There is no talent gap, in my opinion. There maybe has been, and that maybe there is. I don't want to say there isn't, but it's because we're not helping people get from checking the list to finding their place, to finding their purpose, to finding their passion. So they're leaving.
Well, so and that's I think the interesting thing that stands out to me is that my math accounts is that it took 7 years for you to get to that purpose, and another seven to get to the passion, give or take.
Right.
You would seem to be an exception to the rule of somebody that's a lot of time, right? To
It
be there
is.
and to be fulfilled enough. And I think most people sort of follow that same trajectory. So how and the one and we lose the ones that don't have that patience, right?
Right.
So can you? I guess the question that I have is looking back on that experience, just being a person that sort of did it regardless, right? So what stood out to you as the thing that always sort of kept you curious and looking for those things, and how did you sort of get to where you are along the way to sort of help somebody else, like maybe repeat that similar process,
Yeah,
maybe
that's a
accelerate it
great
even.
question. Um, because I think about what industries I've been in before as you asked that question and why I didn't stay there. I did start in the medical field. And that was kind of like a following my grandmother. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I was really young, out of high school. It was a thing. I got a scholarship out of high school because that's what you're supposed to do, is go to college. But I didn't want to go to college really. But I did want to find a passion. And so again, medical people are generally very passionate about what they do and helping others. So I did start there. The learning piece I really gravitated towards. I loved being in nursing school and everything that entailed. I loved the little petri dishes and coming back the next morning and figuring out what was going to grow in them. There was just the curiosity of that. I didn't find a passion within it that kept me there. I found a passion more so that was detrimental to me, and that I cared so deeply about people that the passing away of people affected me in a negative way. And there wasn't a mentor, again, that would step me to the side and go, that was really tough. Let's, process this or whatever. There wasn't that, because medical field is so fast paced. So again, even they can benefit from the whole mentorship and not just training process, to step someone aside and just really say, how did that feel? What are you thinking? Whatever. So then the next industry I went to was kind of like a floundering thing. It was the restaurant industry, right? The hospitality industry, even greater, if you will, because that moved from being a server at a restaurant to, again, I have a more analytical brain. I ended up establishing or helping, not even helping, just really forming their training program for new servers. And then that developed into a corporate, we need you to open a store for us in another whatever. You've developed a great training system. Let's do it again. So that there was that. I was the more analytical checklist, step-by-step process kind of thing, and then interjecting the fun into it kind of situation, to where that got noticed by a hotel manager that was at that restaurant, was like, I need you, come over to the hotel. And it was a 4-star, or 4 diamond, 4-star, 5, it's been a minute. It was a big hotel. It's not just like a Marriott or whatever, right? So started as the concierge there, and then moved back into the restaurant to help them develop the training program once again. And I remember the HR person there, I take it back to Disney. Disney's kind of my favorite place. She had trained in her college days at Disney, and the whole thing was like, once you cross that boundary between back of house to front of house, you're on. This is a show. We're putting on a show for our guests. Whatever you have in your personal life, it stays in back of house. And when you're in front of house, you are on. So I kind of adapted that similar scenario, but I still, again, I didn't stay. It was really grueling, and there wasn't a mentor to be like, you're killing it. How does that feel? What is the next step for you? Or there wasn't somebody there that helped me unpack whatever success or trauma happened in that day, right? So I didn't stay. Then there was a person, it just like if somebody pulls me out of one industry to another, it seems to be my progression into things. There was a person there for a conference that was like, hey, you might be interested in this. And so I started learning more about insurance, and that's how I got into insurance. What made me stay, of course, through the process, I think was just my constant seeking of knowledge. And honestly, if I hadn't found the National Alliance and the educational path that that took me through, I don't think I would have found a purpose to stay. Because at the same time, I was going through college at that, like, I still don't know what I want to do or be when I grow up. So I need to go back to college while I'm working full time. And I was on the path of law enforcement. I thought I wanted to be a lawyer, right? So obviously, still not dedicated to the insurance industry because I'm taking law enforcement classes and looking towards a law degree. That's not insurance, right? So once I found the National Alliance, it was those instructors, it was those courses that I was like, they're like crazy. They're nuts. They're talking about like education like it's something that's like tingly and exciting. I was like, how can I don't know if they had a purpose or a passion through that, but teaching will, you'll find your passion through teaching. But it was like, ooh, I think I want something like that. So for me, I thought that what I'm doing now was more like the end of my career. I've got to work my way up to that passion, to that level, right? So that kept me going. And I started with my CISR. That was the first designation that I got. So it baby stepped me in. When I got to my next agency where I found my mentor, it was the CIC. I had to go through the CIC. He wanted me to have that because he had that. And it was that. So I did that. And that's really what kept me going, was like, there's obviously more to learn here. And I never felt disenchanted by the industry. I never felt hurt or traumatized by the industry. Honestly, it was like a comedic relief for me because clients are what they are. And sometimes what they do is hysterically funny. And as our claims adjusters and underwriters, from the agent desk, sometimes what they do is hysterically funny. And you just have to come back the next day and see what else is going to happen, So I think that's what kept me going. And fortunately for me, unfortunately for others that might be listening, it just happened organically. There was nothing, there were a couple of traumas, if you will, along the way, but there was nothing that really made me want to say, I quit. I can't do this anymore. There were points where I got to that where I was like, I'm not sure if I'm still really fitting in here. But the importance is I had a mentor that I didn't even have to tell that to. We were so in sync that he would just see it's time to take a new step. It's time to check in and see, what else can I have this person do? And that might even be more of a sponsorship. It developed more from a mentorship to a sponsorship to go, I'm not promoting you in terms of a title, but I am promoting your drive. Let's see what else you can do. And in other podcasts and even my own, and if you just talk to me, I'll even say, I had a leader that would come in and say, I need you to do this, and then walk out. And I'm sitting there like, I don't know how to do that. I've never done that before, but I had to do it because he thought I could. And so he would push me outside of my comfort zone that way. And I think that was his style of sponsorship, and seeing the drive to be like, let's see what else she can do. And there was no fear of failure for me because it was always like, well, you said I could do it when I've never been trained to do it. So honestly, if it fails, it's your fault, not mine. So there was always that kind of safety net for me, whether or not that was true for him. But yeah.
All right, Dustin, I've got 3 more questions for you.
Okay.
And
I'll try not to be so wordy next time.
No, that's all right. The first one, really simply, what's one thing you hope you never forget?
One thing I hope I never forget is how to listen to others. Just pure and simple, how to listen to others. Because once you stop listening, you're not going to change. How you felt, like I said before, that one question you asked, how I would have answered 2 years ago versus how I answer now is totally different, because you need to keep yourself open enough to listen to others' perspectives and shift your mindset based on how you feel, not how they feel, but how you feel. If you identify with anything that somebody has said. You can take pieces of that and in listening and shift.
Now, on the other side of that, what is one thing you still have yet to learn?
How to keep my mouth shut. I think podcasting has perpetuated that for me. I still have not learned how to keep my mouth shut, but I am more conscious of listening to others now than I ever have been before, and more conscious to stay within my head to say, okay, wait, don't speak yet, wait. So, yeah, I'm still working on that one.
All right, Dustin, last question to you. If I were to hand you a magic wand of sorts to reshape, change, alter, speed up really any part of insurance, what's that thing? Where's it going? And what's it doing?
I would say speed up going beyond the deck page. I've had several conversations with newer people in the industry and even more experienced people within the industry that are more geared towards just renewing their license off of basic CE and the sales dollars, that perspective of growing my business to X number. And there's not as much focus on the renewal, the retention, the relationship piece with the client. When you start saying, well, how do you do your renewal reviews, or how do you do your initial advisement review for a new client? It's so focused on the deck page. And yes, that's a starting point, but there's so much more with inside the policy that if you don't truly know how to read or compare and understand various different policies together, you could really be stripping a client of a coverage that they might need. And I'll just provide one example of that. It had to do with a water claim, and the verbiage, broad versus special or basic type language, where it was like water damage is excluded if there's been, and like, don't quote me on verbiage here, I'm pulling it out of my head, out of the air. It's like water damage is excluded, particularly when it's been an ongoing or reoccurring situation for a period of weeks, months, or years. It's the weeks, months or years. That's very broad language to interpret in terms of like, if you ended up in court, what does that mean, right? Well, then this other carrier that denied the claim, very sadly, their language was very restrictive and said ongoing water leakage, seepage, whatever, for a period of 14 days or more. Just being able, they don't put that in the marketing material. They don't say, oh, we exclude water damage if it's been occurring over 14 days, and this carrier excludes it if it's been occurring over a period of weeks, months, or years. Very broad interpretation. Knowing the difference there and seeing that those two products may only be a couple of dollars apart is the difference between a client that's crying for not having a water damage claim covered and a client that's not. So if I could really speed something up and wave my magic wand on any new agent or client service person that's in the industry, it's to like, you really need to focus on understanding policy language versus just the deck page, because those ticky little differences and knowing where to find them can make or break the difference for your client.
Dustin, this has been fantastic. I'm going to leave it right there.
Thank you.